Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Alrighty, so Brotto is all set. Where we left off just a few minutes ago was here we have George and the trash with the car. Classic. So again, noteworthy here is that apparently George said something about to the detectives that he threw the trash out. That, the other thing I should point out too is that I pointed out when we watched, okay, I think it was on the last live stream or maybe the one before, when we heard from Owilda McBride and she went and collected the garbage with George. And I pointed it out. I said, it's weird because she's taking him and he's going to show her where the trash is. And I pointed it out because I was like, this is weird because how does he know? Because according to the testimony, he just saw Simon Birch throw it over the fence. That's it. And then later on, Simon Birch went over after George left and went and put it in the dumpster. And when George went back with Owilda McBride, Simon Birch wasn't there, but George took her to where the trash was at the dumpster. So I pointed out that was weird. And it's weird too, that apparently it referenced, where was it? It might have been a bit earlier. It might have been a bit earlier, but it says something about how George, did I highlight it? I maybe highlighted it. I wonder, or no, maybe I should have highlighted it. Anyway, it mentioned that. Let me see. Simon Birch. Anyway, it was earlier, but it said that George, it referenced George throwing out the trash. So, okay. I did point it out though on part one. I pointed it out when I was like, that's weird. It says George threw out the trash. So anyway, but my point being that between what that said in part one, the part I referenced about George throwing out the trash, and then the other thing from the other earlier episode where I thought it was weird that George was able to take Owilda McBride to the trash can or the dumpster when he supposedly wasn't there and didn't throw the trash out, would indicate that, did he actually throw the trash out? And why does it matter? Well, because in the trial testimony, they made a big fuss about the fact that George didn't see the trash get thrown out and had nothing to do with the trash. And why would that be the case? Well, if, potentially trying to distance him from having any maybe ability to mess with the trash. But the thing that is the weirdest part is if that's the case, him and Simon would have had to have decided to make that, to agree on the same story. Because Simon's story matched George's, where Simon said that George did not throw out the trash, he did. So anyway, okay. Oh, well, here it actually, keep reading, Chelsea. Simon threw the garbage bag over a fence near the tow lots dumpster. Okay, well, that's what he said in the trial. So I don't know why there was that other part about George with the trash earlier, but yeah, that's what Simon said in the trial. Okay. On July 24th, I received a call from George Anthony, who wished to meet with Sergeant Allen and I away from Cindy. Oh my God, this was referenced in the trial. This was referenced when George took the stand the last time. So far, he probably testifies again. And it came up on cross that he wanted to have a secret meeting without anybody else. But we did not ever learn yet the contents of this. This is crazy. Wow. Okay. This is the secret meeting. On July 24th, he wanted to meet with them away from Cindy. Wow. All right. Our conversation was surreptitiously recorded. I'm going to put highlighting here because this is a big deal and I want to make sure I can find this in case we don't be weird, please. Stupid thing. In case we want to refer back to it. Okay, we'll just pretend this highlighting is better than it actually is. All right. George began by stating, so GA equals George Anthony. These are their initials. Okay. All right. What does it say? George. Okay. Well, oh my God, I need to set the record straight between you guys and me. You guys are doing what you can. I know that deep in my heart and my gut and my brain. I know it. I know how you guys, at least I have a rough idea of how everything's put together. Granted, it's been years since I've done my stuff, but I know the basic techniques of stuff are still there. I understand all that good stuff. Where this is leading, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about that. But I had bad vibes the very first day when I got that car. I mean, I don't know why George is trying to act like he doesn't want to be telling them this, because the very first thing he did on the very first night was he threw Casey under the bus right off the bat when he approached detectives and offered information saying, I think Casey's withholding information. So this is just disingenuous. I can be straight with you guys and hope it stays in the confines of us three. And it is interesting because this was surreptitiously recorded. In other words, he did not know this was going to be recorded and would not stay within the confines. I don't want to believe that I have raised someone and brought someone in this world that could do something to another person. I don't want to believe that. And if it happens, all I can do is ask you guys, please call me so I can prepare my wife because it's going to kill her. I don't know what is with the clicking. Every episode when I have PDFs, I always end up clicking stuff on accident. So it's interesting. I'm gonna read it again. George, okay. Well, I need you to set the record straight between you guys and me. You guys are doing what you can. I know that. Deep in my heart and my gut and my brain, I know it. I know you guys, at least I have a rough idea of how everything's put together. Granted, it's been years since I've done my stuff, but I know the basic techniques of stuff are still there. I understand all that good stuff. Where this is leading, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about that, but I had bad vibes the very first day when I got the car. I can be straight with you guys, and I hope it stays in the confines of us three. I don't want to believe that I have raised someone and brought someone in this world and could do anything to another person, or sorry, do something to another person. I don't want to believe that. And if it happens, all I can do is ask, can you guys please call me so I can prepare my wife because it's going to kill her. I mean, this to me is just super sus, right? Because it's like, it is, again, it's not the first time because right from the get-go, he's like looking to Casey more, right? You know, I mean, it's just, it's almost like he feels like it's almost like he feels like they're taking too long to arrest her. He's trying to speed up the process. Which is interesting because, as I've mentioned before, it's really curious how they didn't want her to get out of jail. They want her to stay in jail, like, and not have bail. They wanted her to stay there. It's interesting. George acknowledged that if they had lost their granddaughter, they had also lost their daughter. Throughout our conversation, George makes several statements about the case to include, and so again, this is George here, but I guess the reason why I'm here today is I'm just having a hard time grasping what my wife is doing to you guys, and I apologize. Huh? Wife? Okay, let me read this again. George says, but I guess the reason why I'm here today is I'm just having a hard time grasping what my wife is doing to you guys, and I apologize. I don't like this freaking attorney that she has. I can tell you that right now from personal experience, I don't like the guy. I wonder why that is. And then John Allen says, how do y'all get that guy? How do you come about? George says, my daughter talked to someone when you guys initially incarcerated her. And I guess whoever she talked to, you know, according to my daughter now, this is what Mr. Baez told me, or Jose, I'll just call him that. She says, told Jose Baez, oh, I asked someone who's a good attorney. And this is exactly what she said in the jail calls too. And she has $5,000 supposedly, or at least $1,400 of it to give him as a retainer to assist. Wow. We did not contact this man. We initially, when he came to called us, we thought he was a court-appointed attorney. John Allen says, George says, and you know, that's what we thought, because my daughter does not, I don't think she has any money. If she does, John Allen says, right? George says, well, besides stealing from me, my wife, there's no record evidence of that, by the way. Although they seem to like to make that up and throw that in whenever they feel like it'll benefit them. John Allen says, right. Yuri Melich says, I. John Allen says, other people. What I will say, just to address this part about Jose Baez, Casey was found to be indigent. So I think that, you know, if she had whatever she had, even if it was $1, right? I mean, that's the rule, right? Literally, you have to have something to get it to retain an attorney, right? To have an attorney on retainer, but they can accept it for $1, right? It's a procedural thing. So if she had $1, right, that could be enough and then it could have been that they agreed, you know, we'll figure it out. We'll get the paperwork, because it takes time, right? We'll get the paperwork done. Meanwhile, I'll get going. And really, he would have had to have fronted a lot of the costs, like up front, because she was only declared indigent right before the trial started. So he had been representing her at that point for like 3 years. So he must have paid for all those costs up front, you know, hiring experts and all the rest. And it's not just him. There's 2 other attorneys, right? Which is interesting. It's not like he got anything out of it, you know, because when they're declared indigent, you know, in Florida, the JAC, they're not paid nearly. It's, you know, in some places, the attorneys, if they're, you know, court-appointed counsel, are paid maybe somewhat fairly. It's not going to be the same as private practice, but at least it's going to be, you know, reasonable. And my understanding in Florida with the JAC is that is not the case. And they are literally taking a huge hit to represent, you know, somebody as court appointed counsel. But he did that. And anyway, all right. So it continues here. Yuri Melich. One thing I've been meaning to ask, and I apologize, maybe this isn't a good time, but only because this might be the only, I don't know how often we'll be able to sit and talk. When I first saw you that night, when I first came to your house, there was a mention of the car, and there was a mention of what you smelled in the car. Fucking hell. George says, Yuri says, do you remember what you told me? George says, I believe that there's something dead back there. And I hate to say the word human. I hate to say that. As a matter of fact, when you were in court the other day, you did not say that initially. You were led with that by the prosecutor. Boy, does this sound like the trial or what? I caught that. I'm not too naive. So she led that in to be human decomposition. You did not say that. Interesting. I know that as a fact. I've been around that. I mean, the law enforcement stuff and that I did, we caught people out in the woods in a house in a car. So I know what it smells like. It smelled that you never. Why, George? This is very, very bizarre to me. Oh my God, this is very bizarre because, again, I even pointed it out on part 1 of this with this very report that we're reading now, where Yuri Melich is giving his initial impressions, and he says decomposition, and he does not say human. And it was the same thing with literally every single witness in the trial. None of them said human until they were pressed. Every single person. They would say decomposition, and then they would be led by the prosecutor. And sometimes they would try to lead them, and they still wouldn't say it. But why is George pointing it out? George is trying to point out that Yuri Melich was led by the prosecutor, I guess, like at some sort of preliminary hearing, right? Pretrial hearing. Interesting. All right. So then John Allen says, George continues, never get rid of. When I first went there to pick up that, is what's happening here? I wonder if this is what's happening. Is George trying to convince Yuri Melich that it was human so that later on, Yuri will feel comfortable saying and testifying, I smelled human decomposition, instead of saying decomposition and then having to be led by the prosecutor? Is that what's going on? Is he trying to be like, yeah, it's definitely human? And this is really weird stuff right here. And is this why he initiated this private meeting? Because he wants to try to get a sense for if they're going to say it's human decomposition or if they're just going to say decomposition. I don't know. This is weird. All right. When I first went there to pick up that vehicle, I got within 3 feet of it. I could smell something. Now, again, let me scroll back to this real quick. Right here. Listen, look at the account that George is now giving in this private meeting, right? He's giving a different story, in my opinion, from what we have before. This is from the actual report from the time after talking to both George and Simon. Simon stated, "That's rotten." George did not reply. In other words, the initial thought here, the initial story is that George didn't say anything about the odor, but Simon did. Okay, now back to George's statement here in this secret meeting. When I first went to pick up that vehicle, I got within 3 feet of it. I could smell something. You look up and you say, please don't let this be. Please don't let this be. Oh, that's the silent prayer thing that came in at trial. Okay, that's where that came from. That's him trying to corroborate this statement. Please don't let this be because I'm thinking of my daughter and my granddaughter first. I glance, and again, he doesn't say anything to Simon. I glance in the car on the passenger side. I see her seats there. See, this to me definitely is really interesting. This is like him trying to rewrite. I want to say rewrite history, but it's like rewriting people's impressions of history. It's like he's trying to rewrite Yuri Melich's impression of that smell so that Yuri will be like, it's human decomposition. That's what this is reading like to me. Okay, because I'm thinking of my daughter and my granddaughter first. I glance in the car on the passenger side. I see her seats there. I see some other stuff around it. And as I walk around to the driver's side and put the key in, I said, please don't let this be what I think it is. Okay, I see what's interesting here. Well, another thing. Oh, fuck. I just got goosebumps. Okay. I just got goosebumps. Let me scroll back to this. Hold on. Ooh. Oh my God. 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 Okay. Hold on. All right. Every person has testified that when the doors were closed, there was no smell. And that includes the cadaver dogs. Okay. They did not alert until the doors were open. Actually, until the trunk was open. Fuck. You guys. Wow. When the door opened, a very foul odor came from inside of the white Pontiac. And this is what we've heard from people. Either people have said they didn't smell anything, or if they smelled something, it was when the door was open. But when the doors were closed, nope. And now it makes so much sense why there was so much back and forth every time George testified, 50 million times. There was so much back and forth about the unlocking of the door. And I didn't quite understand. See, what's funny is now with this added information, it makes you realize, and this happens in other trials too, it makes you realize these things where you're like, the jury totally didn't understand this. And this is an example of that. Like, because my point is, like, I didn't understand what the back and forth with who unlocked the door and whatnot. It was like, what is the point of this, right? There was no context for it. It didn't make any sense. And I'm like, what is the point? They're just wasting time. I don't understand. Was it the driver's door, the passenger's door, blah, blah. And it doesn't make any sense. And it didn't make any sense until we get to this statement here, which this statement yet has not come into trial. I don't know if it will or not, but it hasn't yet. But that's what's so crazy is the jury doesn't have this. So this is that example for that we see sometimes where the attorneys, it's almost like they've forgotten to recalibrate. It's almost like these attorneys on both sides were like assuming the jury had this other information and they were going to be thinking of this. Anyway, but all that to say, the reason I got goosebumps is this, because the whole thing, now I know why it matters about who opened the door when, because everybody has testified that you smell it when you open the door. And that's what we have here. Now George has the secret meeting after the fact. Okay. Here is why I got goosebumps. Because this is prior knowledge. Where did it go? I walk around to the driver's side and put the key in it. And I said, please don't let this be what I think it is. So this is before the door. This is before the door is open. That's my point. This is why I got goosebumps, because he sees the seat. He sees some stuff. He puts the key to unlock the door, because we already heard testimony that the doors are locked, right? And that's why that kept being oh my God. I kept wondering, why do they keep bringing that up? That's why that kept coming up. The doors were locked. Because here's what I'm saying. He says, put the key in it. And I could see, again, remember all this hullabaloo, this statement has not come in trial yet. But they seem to think it has. But the point here, he says, put the key in it. And I could see the state wanting to be like, he meant the ignition, because that would imply the door was already open. But we know that the door was locked. There's no indication that the door was open yet. And there was testimony about him unlocking the door. Which means before he smelled the smell, he's already giving these indications. This is why I got the goosebumps, because this is like, how would you have known, right? Because it's one thing if you're like, oh, I smell the smell. I know what that smell is. And now I'm worried. But this is him saying he thought, he's indicating he thinks that they're going to be dead. One or both of them, something's happened. But this is before there should be any reason to think that, because you haven't smelled the smell yet. So, okay, because I'm thinking of my daughter, my granddaughter first. I glance in the car on the passenger side. I see her car seat. I see her seats there. I see some other stuff around in it. And as I walk around to the driver's side and put the key in the door, so the door is still closed, I said, please don't let this be what I think it is. The problem is that that's before the smell. This is interesting. The wrecker, I don't know the gentleman's name. I still don't know, but I'm sure you guys know by now. But he and I opened up the door and he said, whoa, that does stink. It's not what I said. I sat in the car for a second. I opened up the passenger door because I was trying to vent the thing. And I smell and I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second and I said, no, George. I remember this from so again, this whole statement hasn't come out, but there's been bits of it that were referenced. And I remember this from Mr. Baez. And I think the state objected a bunch of times and he was able to get it in. Because I remember that it was so funny the way Mr. Baez mocked George. Like, no, George. It was really fucking funny. I tried to start the car for a second. I said, no, George, if there's something wrong, you got to find out now. You can't take it away. Yeah, because it's such a bizarre. I remember this. The way Mr. Baez said it was really funny. I told the guy, I said, will you please walk around to the back of this car and look inside this with me? As I walked around, I don't believe I said to him, aloud. And I think I whispered out to myself, please don't let this be my Caylee. That's what I thought. That's what my heart was saying. I opened it up and that's when I seen in the bag. I did see a stain. I think it's right there where the spare tire was at. All all of this is interesting because none of this came up at the time. This is like him again, trying to rewrite history with the secret meeting. But what's interesting is he's giving all these details that he maybe has started to learn through the investigation. I don't know at this point that they had any results from the testing of the spare tire and whatnot. I don't remember the dates. I doubt it though, because that was sent off to all kinds of different labs. I mean, it was a lot of steps. So, like for example, this bit about this stain with the spare tire, again, George didn't testify that thinking that at the time. He didn't say anything like that to Simon. But if he's saying this shit, right, and this hasn't come up yet because this is still July 24th. They don't have any of these test results and shit. This would be, again, one of those things. Thinking about things only the killer would know, right? Or someone involved, like we've talked about a lot with Richard Allen. This would be one of those things. And it's like, the way I'm seeing this is in his attempt to try to solidify Casey being arrested and being the suspect for this. I mean, to me, he's really incriminating himself. All right, George continues. So that's what I said. The guy said, "Sir, I'll take care of it. I'll get rid of it." What? That's not what he said. But the smell never went away. When I drove around, I told my wife, I said, "This car stinks so bad, I don't know how to drive it home. It's raining outside. Oh, well, I have the windows down in the car probably this much. I couldn't freaking breathe, the air conditioning and stuff." And then Yuri says, "What did your wife think about it when she first noticed it? Did she actually notice it or did she make any comments on it?" George says, "Oh, after we pulled inside the garage, she said her exact words were, 'Jesus Christ, what died?'" That's exactly what she said. But then she said it in a way, she says, "George, it was the pizza, right?" And I said, "Yeah, affirmative. It was the pizza." And that's what I left it go at that. I think it's supposed to say let it go at that. "I'm sitting here as the grandfather, as the father, as George Anthony, and as the guy who smelled the smell before years ago. And you just never forget it. I even stuck my nose down on it. And I'm, what? Ew, what? Stuck your nose down what? I even stuck my nose down on it and I'm concerned." So, oh boy. Yuri says, do you think the reason your daughter doesn't want to tell us what happened is for fear that her mom might say, "I told you so," or something along that? Do you think that it would be so disappointing to mom and that's why she's taking this to the bitter end? So that this was really him jumping to an acknowledgement that him and George must be on the same page, that George is of the understanding that Casey is responsible here. But George doesn't explicitly say that. He just hints at it, right? He's trying to throw her under the bus, but make it seem like he's not a piece of shit dad, basically, right? He's trying to really, really heavy duty apply it. Make sure he's, all right, you guys got it, right? There's a stain by the tire, right? Wink, wink. It's but he's trying to be but he's not flat out saying, "Yep, Casey did it." It's gross to me, and it's really slimy. Really weaselly. George Anthony, "Now my daughter lives on the edge. You know that from all the lies, all the contradictions. I wonder where she gets it from. And my daughter takes things as far as she can take them." Yuri says, "Uh-huh." George says, and then she piles on some other stuff. There's this is going to sound really crazy at the point, but my wife and I still believe that Casey still resents my wife the day that our granddaughter was born. What? George continues, "But a lot of times they've gotten into it because of Casey not being where she's supposed to have been. The lying about working. Me want to be detective. Me want to be Mr. Detective again. I know you guys brought up about Sports Authority, and we heard about this in the trial. About confronting the manager. John Allen says it's not necessarily being a detective, that's being a dad. George says, and I even asked this Ryan, God, what's Ryan's last name? Hastings? Yeah, I asked Ryan, I said, "Ryan, did you work with Casey?" "No, she doesn't work here." I said, "Well, then how in the hell did she make, oh, did we tell you about a report supposedly that she was at gunpoint?" Yuri says, yeah, well, George says, of a $4,000, Yuri says, yeah, actually, George says, inaudible. Yuri says, "Lee told me that when we were sitting there." George says, "Right." Yuri says, "Just us four." This is weird. This is weird. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this is news. This is brand new story here about this Gunpoint thing. They're all being very cagey and vague. But this is interesting from Yuri. Just us four. Like, what? Like there's some secret club? George, because I asked her about that night. I mean, she puts on a pretty good act, I guess. Who talks about their daughter like this? This is weird. I don't know if she's playing actress or what. I said, where's the officer's card? And I want to see it. I want to know what's going on with this, just if we have to place you somewhere else because this guy's got your information and I want you to get the hell out of this. That's exactly what I said. Yuri says, right. And George, Dad, I'll be fine. I just need a moment. And my wife says, oh, we're going to work with this through her and all. What? And I said, this stuff does not add up. John Allen says, do you think Casey believes that nobody would forgive her if something happened, if some accident happened, some bad thing? George says, that's, I'm not able to answer. I'm going to have to think about that. John Allen says, if she thinks that nobody would ever forgive her for, George says, right. Because when she started coming clean with the money she's been taking and this and that coming up. Yeah, she bawled. I mean, she literally bawled. She didn't because we just kept on catching her and stuff. I'll tell you one thing. I don't know how she made a $4,400 or a $4,000 deposit into my wife's account. We still don't know how she did it. It looked very real. A deposit? You know, the carbon copy thing. Oh, and it looked real. Yuri says, well, did that actually deposit that money or did she just hand you a deposit slip? George says, right. Now that's, wow, what a mess. John Allen says, George says the same amount I believe I gave my wife when I sold my Toyota Camry, but I sold my Camry last August. That's where I got my other car from. What? I don't know. This is all, I don't know. Weird. So in other words, they did not close the loop on this, whether or not it actually deposited money or it was like fake deposited money. Because here it says, where was it? She made a $4,400 or a $4,000 deposit. She made a deposit into my wife's account. That makes it sound like the deposit went through, like she deposited money. But then it's like he's implying that it was fake. And then that's why he asks, like, well, did it go through? Blah, blah. And George doesn't answer the question. He says, right, now doesn't answer the question. And then he changes the topic to selling the car. John Allen. Well, I mean, we'll keep you updated looking for Zenaida, but if she doesn't exist, if this is all, we're going to continue looking in the wrong places. And you know what? It isn't the manpower. It isn't our time. It's that if we continue and with all these resources and okay, if we focus all these resources in the wrong area, George says she gets further and further away. And somebody, George says, and that's if she's still with us. Anyone who hasn't seen it, please watch the video jail calls with George, because there's so many things that he says that, again, consciousness of guilt, embedded confessions. I think we're seeing a little bit of that here, because this is only 10 days at this point. Not even 10 days. This is insane. This is July 24th. She was reported missing on July 16th. So as far as how long they've been looking for her, it's been 8 days. And George is like, if she's still with us. And what's interesting is whenever he's on those video jail calls with Casey, which would have been actually after this secret meeting, timeline-wise, how many times does he say, I just know she's going to be okay? Remember the part where he's like, I just hope whoever has her is letting her watch her videos and letting her, they're loving her and they're, you know, giving her favorite snacks and whatnot. And it's like, what? And then I even said, I was like, he sounds like he's describing a kid who's in heaven, the way he said this, but he's saying that this should be what's happening to her as she's being kidnapped. And then he shows up with that shirt that says fly home, sweet angel or something. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, you know, it had like angel wings. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of examples. That's just the first ones that come to mind. But this is only 8 days in, he says, if she's still with us. When asked what George, thought may have happened, oh boy, ladder gate. He mentioned that Cindy had found the side gate open and the pool ladder down sometime around the time Caylee was last seen. Woohoo! Ladder gate in the house. He wasn't sure of the date. Note that when at Universal Studios with Casey, we heard about this. When they were interrogating her, Cindy had called him, Yuri, mentioning this same incident and the fact that she thought it odd. Both George and Cindy say they keep the side gate closed and the pool ladder up. Well. Ladder gate. What I'll have to do, so on this one, this is all building the case against Casey, right? I'll have to make a separate one with all the stuff in here that is building a case against not Casey, like her family or whatever, like the stuff that is like exculpatory essentially, or implies somebody else being involved, because that'll have to be a separate document. So I'm glad I'm highlighting it for that reason. It'll be easier to go back and find it. Because there's a lot. It'll be interesting. And then what I'll do is I'll make that list and then we'll compare them side by side. The case against Casey and then the case against George, even though that they didn't build one on purpose, and see which one has more to it. I guess I should say the case against George and or Cindy, but I think we can call it George, honestly. George was told of the 911 calls made by Cindy, and we offered to let him hear the calls before they were played by the media. The media had made a public records request for them earlier that day. George said he'd want to hear them, and he wanted Lee to also be present. George didn't want Lee to know he was with us. I mean, what is with all this shady, secretive nonsense? So I called Lee and asked if he wanted to come listen to the tapes. He agreed. While waiting for Lee to arrive, George began. So was George going to pretend he's just arriving? George began feeling nauseous and we went outside for some fresh air. George began shaking and vomiting and he refused medical attention, saying it was his nerves. When Lee arrived, George went to the bathroom and Lee listened to the 911 tapes. Okay, what? Hold on. I'm clicking. George said he'd want to hear them and he wanted Lee to also be present. George didn't want Lee to know he was with us. When Lee arrived, George went to the bathroom and Lee listened to the. So did George not hear the tapes then? This whole thing doesn't make sense here. I don't know what's going on with this. I'm going to put this in a different thing. Because I don't understand what the hell is going on with this, but there might be something else that comes up later that will, this is just very weird because George says he wants to hear the tapes, but he wants Lee to be present. However, listen to how George is controlling this whole situation. This is very odd. However, George doesn't want Lee to know he was with them. So in other words, he's like basically asking law enforcement to lie for him. I mean, the irony, right? So Yuri calls Lee and asks if he wants to listen to the tapes. He agreed. While waiting for Lee to arrive, George began feeling nauseous and went outside. And then I guess he pretends to just arrive for the first time, even though they've already been together. However, this is George went to the bathroom and Lee listened to the 911 tapes. After this, Lee and George drove home. So George didn't. It's almost like this almost sounds like George was trying to set up a situation where he wants Lee to listen to the tapes, right? And he needs to get a way to have Lee listen to the tapes. Like he doesn't actually want to hear them or whatever, apparently. I don't know. But like he wants Lee to hear it. Like that's what this looks like, almost like a way to control the situation to make Lee hear the tapes. If that makes any sense. Now, why he wants Lee to hear the tapes, I don't know. But remember this too. I'm just thinking out loud. Like when those 911 calls were made, remember George was eerily quiet, right? Like, and there were times where they were even like asking, like his mom or Caylee or her mom, like asking, like saying things to him. He's like not responding, and it was really weird. Yeah. So I don't know. After this, Lee drove George home. How did George get there? What? This is missing a lot of stuff. Like, how did George get there then? I'm assuming they're at the police station or the sheriff's office, although they don't even say, which they should. On July 25th, Cynthia and George Anthony visited Caylee at the Orange County Branch Jail. Oh, this is the first time. This is the first video call. So now we have a good idea of the timeline, right? This is the next day. The next day after the secret meeting, they have that first video call. Oh, look at that. Now I can highlight it easily. Oh my God, that's a miracle. Thank you. Visitation was done by video, and this visitation was not only recorded but monitored by myself live. Oh, we did not learn that in the trial. We did not know that while that was happening, Yuri was monitoring it at the time. We did not know that. That's interesting. This is a godsend that I can highlight it like this with the thing. No. Oh my God, that's making my life so much easier. Cynthia asked Caylee questions about Zenaida. Caylee could only say for people to check in New York, Charlotte, and Miami. She says Zenaida has roots in North Carolina, and her mother, Gloria, is in her 50s. So these we have gone through. This is again taken from these jail videos. Let's see here. Interesting here. On July 26th, Lee Anthony, brother of Caylee, sent me an email detailing what Caylee had told him and their parents during visitation on July 25th. Remember how many times Lee's like, you can trust me. What you say stays between us. And I know I had the feeling the whole time. I'm like, he's working her. He's trying to get her to incriminate herself. Remember, he kept saying, write me these letters. They'll be private, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, look at this. Not surprising to me. He's emailing the detectives and now, why is he doing this? Probably because he doesn't know. This is just so much fucking subterfuge going on here. I hate this. He must not know that freaking Yuri is already watching the entire thing the whole time. They must think it's private. Like they know that those things are being recorded, but they don't. I guess he doesn't know that it's being monitored live. Hence, Lee finds the need to throw his sister under the bus anyway and send Yuri an email for good measure detailing what Caylee told him. This is incredible. This is really crazy stuff. I later reviewed the visitation videos and confirmed what he'd written down in the email. In short, Caylee gave the family information on how to get in touch with several persons. Below is a synopsis of the information as well as what I want to know, Yuri, is what do you think about the part where Lee says that he has verified and found Jeff Hopkins and Juliette Lewis in them? What did you think of that, Yuri? Caylee claimed that while employed with Kodak, her manager was Mike Kozak. That's funny how similar that is to Kodak. Again, this is just verifying that they didn't work for Color Vision. Raquel Farrell, Zanny's roommate, right? All right, on July 28th, Lee Anthony visited Casey at the Orange County Ranch Jail. Visitation was done by video, and this visitation was not only recorded but monitored by myself live. On July 29th, Lee Anthony provided Detective Corporal Eric Edwards a copy of some of Casey's email. At the end of this email thread was what appeared to be a forwarded email from Thomas Frank regarding a Universal Studios event. The forwarded email was written to appear as if Thomas was telling Casey about an upcoming Universal event and what time to appear for said event. The email address for Thomas Frank was listed as thomasfrank@events.universal.com. I sent an email address to this address and received an automatic reply indicating that the domain name of the recipient address is invalid, meaning it did not exist. I checked the name and email address with Leonard Tortora. Interesting. So this should go on the list because seems like she's still attempting to, like, in other words, I could see how in their eyes it's like she's still trying to attempt to validate that employment. And this is on July 29th. Also, love how Lee's just throwing his sister under a bus. Good brother. So now what I'm wondering is if I can highlight and copy. Let's see. I bet I can. And that's part of what I wanted to do when I. Let's see if that does anything. Oh my God. That's not, no. All right. Well, we're not going to do it that way then. That's fine. So. Wait, what? On July 29th, let me just make sure. Okay, so I just wanted to verify. So we don't know when this email is from, actually. July 29th is when Lee provided the email. We don't have a date for the email, which we should. They should be giving the date. So actually, I don't know that I should put this on the list because my thought was that she was still doing this on July 29th. And I was like thinking to myself, how is she having access to email while she's incarcerated to try to still perpetuate this story? But I don't think that's the case. I think this is an old email. So it's still interesting, but I'm not going to put that on the list. Because this is just more of the same then. It's not like new. Interesting. On July 30th, he spoke to Mike Kozak, who confirmed Casey worked with him in 2005 and said that Casey was terminated for, quote, job abandonment after Caylee was born. He spoke with Ryan Paisley. He's been a friend of Casey's since they were 5. Wow. He was listed in her cell phone contacts as best friend. This is another one. He is not testified yet. Ryan first heard of Caylee's disappearance the morning of July. So this is new information because we've not heard from him. So what did she tell her best friend, Ryan, apparently? So Yuri says, the fact that Caylee is missing, when did you first hear about that? Ryan says, I heard about that the morning that she got arrested. Yuri says, okay, did you hear from her or did you hear it on the news? Ryan says, yeah, I heard it from her mom. Her mom called me 8:30 in the morning. Yuri says, okay, and I guess Ryan says, and then I spoke to her at 10 in the morning, and that's when I got the, the Zenaida Hernandez crap, and then, John Hopkins and all that. So let me be accurate here. He says Zenaida Hernandez and John Hopkins. That's, yes, accurate, right? I don't blame him for getting these silly names mixed up, which again, I was telling you yesterday, that doesn't seem right to me. Yuri says, yeah, from Jeff Hopkins. Well, Yuri says, let's talk about the Zenaida. You said Zenaida and crap. That kind of, obviously that piques my interest. Ryan says, yeah, that's she was just, I've never heard the name, and it doesn't even sound like a real name, which is odd because it actually is a real name, right? As we learned tonight. But I've never heard the name in my life, and suddenly Casey has known her for 4 years. Yuri says, when was the first time that she ever mentioned Zenaida or Zanny to you? Was it the 15th or was it before that? Ryan says, it would have been the morning she was getting arrested. Yuri says, okay. So prior to that, ever since I guess the age of 5, she's never mentioned the name Zenaida. Well, how would she know Zenaida when she's 5 years old, though? That's a stupid ass question. Yeah, I don't think she needed a babysitter when she was 5 years old, right? Anyway. When asked, Ryan said Casey made statements to him about what life would have been like without Caylee, according to Ryan. Yuri says, okay, well, back to the way she was acting. Was she making any, and again, this is a young single mom, and ever made any statements to you like, what if she hadn't had Caylee and how her life would have turned out? Ryan says, oh, yeah, definitely. Yuri says, can you give me an example of what she would say? Ryan says, well, getting along the lines of, well, sometimes I wish I hadn't, is this really what, dude? You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of like Richard Allen's so-called confessions, like the vast majority of them, where it's like, I think I maybe did it, or I didn't do it, but maybe I did it. Like, not like that's what this reminds me of. If this is what they base their whole idea and theory of the case on, for like, I so far, this is the first time we've actually seen this. Well, here's what I mean. Well, we know that this was like the theory, and we know this is the rumor and the general conception, right? The thing is that in the trial, literally, we've not heard any testimony that says anything to the sort that would support that Casey felt like Caylee was getting in the way. All of the testimony from everybody has been the opposite. So far, with all the experience in the trial, looking at this Ryan dude is the first and only person so far to say anything that would indicate that Casey felt like Caylee was a hindrance. And this is how he is saying it. Along the lines of, well, sometimes I wish I hadn't, because I'm young and I can't go out and I can't do things I want to do. And that was pretty common. So, like, is this it? Like, and that was sort of what I was getting at, is like, to my knowledge, this is the only thing that the state has that could have given them the idea for the theory of their case, like the motive, right? For motive, essentially. Not that they have to prove motive, but you kind of need it in a case like this, right? And that it's just this, this is their motive, right? That's it. That's all. In terms of the evidence so far, this is it. All right, moving right along. Ryan mentioned an incident where Casey told her mother she worked at a local sports authority store with Ryan. Ryan was then an employee. Oh, right. I was like, yeah, Ryan sounds familiar. Okay, he was the employee there. Interesting. Ryan received a call from Cindy about this and said, Ryan says, yeah. And she, I guess at one point, because her mom tried to confirm some lies that Casey had said, her mom called. God, they must have been so annoyed because so Cindy calls Sports Authority. Meanwhile, George shows up there, right? I guess. Her mom called and said, because at the time I was like, oh, at 21, I was working at Sports Authority, and I guess because I loaned her $4. $4? He loaned her $4 while I was working there. And I guess at the time she was telling her mom that she worked at Sports Authority with me, and then go back to $400. I think I missed you on that. Was that about 400? Ryan says, well, because I just lent her 400. Oh, well, I didn't lend her. Basically it was, Yuri says, right. Ryan says she was supposed to give it back, but I lent her $400 for what she said was rent to her parents. Which it didn't make any sense really, because I would think that as a single mother, she doesn't really have the faculties to take care of a child. They're not going to charge their daughter rent. Yuri says, right. Ryan says, but I went along with it. anyways, because whatever, I don't know. I guess she needed it more than I did. Yuri says, all right. Ryan says, so I gave her the $400. And I guess during that time, she was telling her mom she worked at the Sports Authority, and many like nights that she's out, that her excuse was that the reason why she was staying out late is because there would be like inventory, things like this. And that the only reason why her mom never really got upset about it. And this is what even Cindy told. The only reason why Cindy got upset about it was because she knew I was there and that she was okay when in fact this never even happened. What? Only reason why her mom never really got upset about it. And this is even what Cindy told. The only reason why Cindy got upset about it because she knew I was there. I guess what he's saying is that Cindy learned because Ryan was working there that Casey had made that part up about staying late to work at the Sports Authority. Ryan, she never worked there. She just hung out with me because I was something. Yuri, let me guess. Was it the Sports Authority over here at Waterford? Ryan, well, no. Originally, that is what Cindy told me. That originally she worked with me at the one at 436 Colonial. Yuri says, gotcha. And then she transferred to the one in Waterford. Yuri, but she never worked for Sports Authority. Ryan, never worked at Sports Authority. I'm confused because apparently apparently he worked at the Sports Authority and she hung out with him there. But apparently the sports authorities that she said she worked at with him were different sports authorities than the one where she was actually like, wouldn't you at least, because you could actually, if you're actually hanging out there, at least you have a shot at making it seem like you work there. I don't know. None of this is making any sense. Never worked at Sports Authority, but that's what she told her mom. Yuri says, well, when did you find this out? Last year or just recently? Ryan says, no, I found this out about a month, 3.5 weeks before Caylee went missing. Her mom, Cindy, called me and told me not to talk to Casey because she didn't want me to get hurt. Listen to her. Listen to Cindy being classic Cindy, calling up Casey's friend, telling him what to do. Incredible. Told me not to talk to Casey because she didn't want me to get hurt because she's been lying about a lot of stuff and she's doing this to try to punish Casey and to isolate her from her friends. That's what Cindy's doing. So manipulative. And stole money from her and her grandmother. No evidence of any of that. And she doesn't want me to get hurt. That's not what it is. And I feel bad for this kid that he believed Cindy because Cindy's just trying to manipulate him, which I was okay. I understand. And she, seemed really upset. She was just calling me to tell me what was going on and also to ask me about some lies that she had suspected Casey of telling. I don't understand why any of this is in here. Like, remember, what are we here for? The case against Casey Anthony. Well, this is all very confusing and there's some tea if you can figure out what the fuck they're trying to say, maybe. What the fuck is this relevant to at all? Like, this is so extraneous to anything. I actually forgot that's what the topic, and I had to remind myself because this is so like not related to anything. But that's interesting that it's in this investigative report, isn't it? Like, if it's not relevant, you don't have to put it in. Anyway, about a week and a half before Caylee went missing, Ryan had a conversation with Casey over the phone in which she told him she was using drugs. This was odd to Ryan, who said Casey was Ryan, she says she told him. See, and there's also a lot of typos, which doesn't fucking help things. So to quote Ryan here, I guess according to Yuri, but that's literally what she would say. I would she would get into drugs and, I would ask her specifically what, and she said, well, just pot and, whatever else is around, and is actually sort of the way she put it. This is about as strong of a statement as the other statement. And again, prompted from the questions by the detectives, not offered up. So again, it's like, it's like leading questions in trial, right? But we're not in trial, obviously, or it's just like these same tactics, right? And the thing is, right now, here's what's going on. Cindy has called Ryan and is throwing Casey under the bus, and Cindy, all these names. Cindy is like saying Casey's lying about this and that, blah, blah. And so how can you blame him then when, if prompted by investigators, law enforcement detectives, and they're asking him a leading question and he's already, you see what I mean? It's like that perception that, well, his friend is really a liar, blah, blah. It just, because the thing is, again, there has been literally no testimony in the trial that she was using drugs. In fact, all of the testimony in the trial has been the opposite, that she didn't use drugs. So far, this Ryan fellow is the first to have anything to say that would go along with A, the idea that Casey felt hindered by having a daughter, and B, that she used drugs, which again, those are things that are like maybe in the general perception that were made up by the media, you know, because it didn't come out in trial. At least it hasn't yet. It is in this report, but it didn't come out in trial. And it's, the thing is, again, it's only this one witness so far. So this, I think, needs to go in the thing, though. We can have for Caylee, Ryan had a conversation with Casey when she told him she was, this was odd to Ryan, who said Casey was, Ryan says she told him. Like, I wish this made any type of sense, because this is important. Why was this odd to Ryan? Is it odd to Ryan because Ryan's like, she doesn't usually use drugs? And why did they not clarify this? This sentence is a disaster, and this was odd to Ryan. Why? Actually, I'm not going to include it because it's the fact that it's incomplete and there's all these mistakes. I'm just, whatever. Also on July 30th, Agent Bolin and Agent McEllier from the FBI conducted videotaped interviews of George and Cindy. Oh my God. Are those available? I haven't seen those. Oh man, I would love to watch those. I'm sure they're absolute dumpster fires. And there's, you have to get their report for a synopsis of those interviews. On July 31st, Corporal Eric Edwards and I interviewed Cindy. Corporal Edwards was assisting me by interviewing several Casey's friends and family. Cindy freely provided information necessary to establish a timeline of events. From June 16th to July 15th, Casey told Cindy several times that Caylee was with Zenaida. At no point during this time frame did Casey let them talk on the phone. We already know all this. And there's a story about the car crash. Due to a scheduling conflict, the entire timeline of events were not discussed on this date. Cindy volunteered to provide a second interview that would be done on a future date. On August 1st, the FBI laboratory, through Agent Nick Savage, what a crazy name if you're like, look at that, FBI Agent Nick Savage, informed me that a hair collected from the trunk of Casey's white Sunfire exhibited stages of decomposition. Okay, then they conducted a second audio recorded interview with Cindy. While discussing the recovery of Anthony's white car, Cindy said she removed items from the car prior to law enforcement being contacted. Cindy explained, right, we know about this. She washed the pants. She did all the things. She put the Febreze, the dryer sheets. She touched everything. Also on August 4th, Corporal Eric Edwards and another dude conducted audio recorded interview of George Anthony. Oh boy. During that interview, George reported that he had last seen his granddaughter on June 16th. George explained that his daughter, Casey, informed him she was leaving for work at approximately 12:50. At that time, George observed Casey was wearing a pair of gray pants, or a gray pair of dress slacks with unknown pinstripes. He believed it's the same outfit that Cindy had laundered above. He also recalled that Caylee was dressed in blue jeans and a pink top. And the sunglasses, we heard about this in the trial. The backpack, hair was in a ponytail. George, having to work, left the address a short time later. This is the last time anyone interviewed aside from Casey can say that they were in the presence of Caylee Anthony. Where's this footnote? Oh, that's the Cindy and George's attorney. Okay. Oh, because they were going to, interesting. That's interesting. So let me point that out what that was. So this says, in terms of Casey talking about who the father of Caylee was, right? You know, died in a car crash, blah, blah, only known as Eric. Cynthia had told them, this is another Cindy lie. She claimed their attorney, Paul Kelly, helped them drop paperwork for the custody of Caylee. Okay. She told law enforcement, she told detectives that their attorney helped them drop paperwork for the custody of Caylee. All right, here's the footnote. I spoke with Paul Kelly, who claims he has no file created for this request and has no further information about Eric. So another Cindy lie. Let's highlight this so this can be on our other document. This is insane and sad again, just the sadness of how the hell do they not, how are these detectives not being like, there's something going on with this entire family? Like, how are they not like, wow, like mother, like daughter, like father? I mean, you know what I mean? Like this shit. It's the same thing that sends red flags for Casey, but not with anybody else, apparently. Wow. And there's the footnote. Okay. So yeah, this is the last time anyone aside from Casey can see they're in the presence of Caylee Anthony. Oh, and I was going to highlight that also because this is in a way, this would make him the other suspect, right? Because usually what do? You look at whoever saw the person last. So this is the last time anyone apart from Casey, at least of the people they've interviewed, can say that they were in the presence. So that's noteworthy again for when I add it to the other document. Okay, here's the pictures of her dancing. That came in at trial. Sad that this is in here. On August 6th, I spoke with Crystal at Valencia Community College and to see if Casey had ever been enrolled at the school. She confirmed that Casey Anthony never applied for admission or attended courses at the community college. So this can also go on the thing. Again, sad that this is in this investigative report as if this is supposed to prove she committed murder. It's this thing of like, just can we find out all the things she lied about? And I want to make a distinction here because there's times where all of the lies matter. In my opinion, a great example of that, Murdaugh. All of the lies served a purpose. And that purpose was to further either stealing money from people or getting away with murder. And when he got caught in a lie, he made another lie. They had a purpose and they were all related to the crimes he was charged of. That is not the case here. Casey, we've talked a lot about this, all these imaginary friends and going into the detail about, Zanny's life and all this. There was no reason for any of that. None. And again, the lies were existing long before anything ever happened and they served no purpose. And initially my thought, it's like, is she compulsive, like, pathological liar? But I don't think that's not where I'm at anymore. You guys probably know because I've talked about it quite a bit, but I think it's just her family, obviously this is a family thing. They create this false reality and it's gaslighting. So, okay, that's where we were. All right. On October 7th, I spoke with oh my God, here we go. Arpad Vass. Dr. Arpad Vass of the Oak Ridge Institute in Tennessee. Dr. Vass was analyzing air samples collected from the White Sun fire. He indicated that his preliminary results indicated a lot of gas compounds associated with human decomposition. He also found high amounts of chloroform, unusually high. And actually in his testimony, he said shockingly high. And then of course, when subsequently we heard from Michael Rickenbach, who was the FBI specialist, the chemist dude. And he said it was not shockingly high levels of chloroform. Just for anyone who missed that. Detective Sandy Kahn, a computer forensic. Interesting. I don't think we've heard from them, although we were getting into all the computer stuff. I'm surprised we haven't heard from this person yet. I don't think. Detective Sandy Kahn, a computer forensic technician, conducting a forensic exam. See, I feel like we heard this testimony. Maybe this is another case where somebody got married and changed their name. But in a few days, she returned saying searches were done not only for chloroform, but for ingredients used to make chloroform and whatnot. That's not quite accurate. Given the dates of the searches, they sent subpoenas for Cindy and George's work records, see if they were working at the same time search was completed. Cindy's work records show that she was working on the days the searches were performed. George's work records show he was not actively employed during the month of March. So it could have been George, couldn't it then? Okay. This will go on the other one for Jesus Christ, though. On August 14th, I reviewed the transcripts of the second and third 911 call placed by Cindy. In our first 911 call, she told dispatchers that she wanted her daughter arrested for having stolen her car and money. Yeah, are you not going to arrest her for making a false statement to law enforcement? She also told the dispatcher that she has a possible missing child, I think a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month. In our second 911 call, the third she made in total, Cindy is obviously shaken and upset. She says, I just found out my granddaughter's been taken. She's been missing. This is all from the call. On August 14th, Cindy and George visited Casey again at the jail. Yep. Later that day, I received word from the Orange County Jail that Casey had written a note addressed to Sheriff Barry. Now, remember, this is because remember when her dad was like, you're the boss. You're the boss. You're in control here. You just have to write this note to the sheriff and he'll let you do whatever you want and blah, blah. And he was so adamant about it. And she was like, this is nonsense. And he was like, no, you can't. And it's really sad because she actually did it. I was thinking that she was just saying yes to appease him, but we didn't know. But now we know. She did write this note. And this is based on what her dad told her to do. This note was given to Corrections Officer Marlene Baker and then so passed along, and then it gave it to Yuri. So it never went to Sheriff Barry. It went to Yuri Melich. So that's her dad. Wow, orchestrating this. Because he was so adamant, and it seemed so weird at the time. I was like, I was thinking to myself, she's not dumb. She knows that there's no way they're going to make special. I don't even remember what it was. It was a special request for something, an in-person visit or something, right? And I was like, they're not going to break those rules for her. And she knows that. I know that. But why does he keep telling her? And he wouldn't let it go. And he kept saying he was like so adamant. He knew that note would get to Yuri. So the note said, in part, is there any way that I can have a meeting set up with my father, George Anthony? I would in every way appreciate it. I know this is an unusual request, but it's important nonetheless. Right. That's right. He was trying to talk. That's right. This was after the whole thing. Now I remember. This was after Cindy let it slip about the news about the pool. And then he had that crazy reaction. And then he was like, I really want to see you one-on-one. Okay. Wow. So Sergeant Allen and I became making arrangements with the Orange County Jail to see if they could accommodate this request. They said they would. We, along with Special Agent Scott Bullen of the FBI, arranged to have George meet us somewhere. We picked him up and bring him to the jail. Our conversation in the car was surreptitiously recorded, where we confirmed with him that this meeting was not the idea of law enforcement, that we were not asking him to ask any specific questions. And in short, he was not acting as an agent of the state. Well, by saying that, they've just given him that idea. And he wants to do that anyway. He agreed with this. George also, he's going to try to talk. He's going to try to get her to say something incriminating. He agreed with this. George also said he hoped this opportunity would help bring some closure and some answers. Yeah, this is him trying to seal the deal on her fate. Wow. So they arrived at the jail at 1930 hours. We learned that attorney Adam Gabriel was visiting Casey. I don't know who that is, Adam Gabriel. Sergeant Allen impressed upon him that we were here at Casey's request, and if she wished to speak with George, we would facilitate that. Furthermore, Sergeant Allen told him that if Casey's intent was to have Adam sit in with them, we would not keep him from doing so. Ultimately, it was Casey's decision whether or not she wished to see her father on whatever terms she saw fit. After waiting for approximately an hour and a half, Casey decided not to speak with her father, and George was taken home. Good for her. Good for you, Casey. Statements were later obtained from the correctional officers who handled the letter and the original submitted into evidence. Good for her. On August 15th, while preparing the packet for the state's attorney's office, I received copies of the cell phone records for Casey's phone. I noticed that the dates quoted in the search warrant affidavit regarding the cell phone conversations from July 15th were incorrect. Oh boy. On August 18th, at approximately 1300 hours, computer forensics. Oh, okay. They seized something from her laptop. This chat was between an identity known as New York Italiano 3 and Casey O'Marie. Oh, that's got to be between her and Tony. And we heard about that. That already came in the trial, the chats. That's got to be what that is. Right, chat log. Okay, Anthony admitted. Wait, what? Oh, no, it's Anthony Rusciano. What? Okay, hold on. So that's not Tony Lazzaro. Hold on. It's a different Italian. All right, Detective Tana again identified New York Italian 3 as Anthony Rusciano, who was recently employed as a deputy sheriff for our agency. What? Once this information was shared with us, Sergeant John Allen called Anthony, who agreed to come. And just to be clear, this is Anthony, not last name Anthony, first name Anthony. Anthony Rusciano, who agreed to come and speak with them. What the heck? He arrived at the office. They spoke with him about the case and made reference to the chat log recovered by Detective Khan. Anthony admitted to knowing Casey and having spent time with her a few times within the past several months. Wow. He saw Caylee and Casey only once, but when they first met, he'd seen her in person, but never again. Wow. And then the following are statements, and she references the nanny, and this is May 3rd. Wow. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back in just a few minutes, and we will carry on with part 3. Since this is a longer read than I anticipated, but we're learning a lot, so I'll be back in a few.